Welcome back to the Morning Brief on Channels Television. And of course, stemming up on the back of the president's speech yesterday, there's been a flurry of reactions from Nigerians, the high point being the announcement of a national confab. But of course, we've dispensed with that part of the conversation yesterday as much as possible. And this time around, we're looking at the economic part of the president's speech. Of course, Nigerians have been talking about how it's high on compassion and how the president, takes into cognizance the fact that Nigerians are struggling with the economic reforms. But the president said something key yesterday, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And besides that, he made some very definitive statements in that speech yesterday. Of course, he talked about paying back the inherited forex backlog of $7 billion, that the administration has cleared the ways and means debt of over 30 trillion naira and reduced the debt service ratio from 97% to 68%. So this bears, this elicits needs for scrutiny and some questions. And to help us understand this morning, we have joining us Mr. Dari Osamo. He's a founder, CEO, Impact Energy and Logistics Limited. He's also the Chief Financial Officer, University of Warwick Business School. He joins us virtually. We also have Mr. Aliyu Audu. He's the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. He joins us from our Abuja studio. We also have Mr. Gospel Obele, a research economist, who joins us this morning virtually. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to start with...
for having me.
Yes. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Audu. Of course, I'm sure you have read through the speech, being an insider, and of course, I'm also sure that you've, seen some of the reactions, from Nigerians who have put a question mark on some of the declarations of the president in that economic part of the speech. So I'd like you to speak to the authenticity, indeed, of the declaration by the president, particularly with regards to reports from the last administration and even this administration that the 30 trillion naira ways and means had been securitized in different portions to be paid back over a period of time. So how come we now hear that, that has been cleared? Mr. Aliyu. Mr. Aliyu, did you hear my question? Mr. Aliyu, did you hear my question?
Towards the end, yeah. I can hear you now.
Towards the end, yeah. I can hear you now. Towards the end, yeah. I can hear you now.
Oh, we're going to try to address that and return to Mr. Aliyu. But I'll take it now to Mr. Gospel Obele to respond to the same question. Mr. Obele, did you hear me?
Very much for having me. I would say it's a very mixed narrative. It's a very mixed narrative. Globally and contextually, we are in very, very sensitive times. And there is almost no economy right now in the world that is not going through something similar in terms of cost of living crisis, in terms of worsening business environment, struggling with growth, worsening living standards. So it's a general global problem. The state around climate risk and its impact on food security and the like. So it's a growing general problem. However, the dynamics or the weight of these challenges, when you look at, depending on where that economy stands in terms of being developed, underdeveloped, or whatever the case may be, could also nuance around the weight of the reality of those challenges on ground. So for Nigeria, it's more severe, and more severe because we've not been able to gain the momentum or the control over the critical elements that are shaping these outcomes for the Nigerian people. So I said all that to say that, to establish the fact that whoever is in power, the government and all that, would always find a challenge in times like this. So it's not a conversation of who is in power. It's the reality of the context and times we live in. However, we've also have built some form of reactive response, to challenges and times like this. And if you look at the array of policies that have been delivered over a period of time right now, even since the last 1 year in current administration, they've not been proactively positioned, to enable growth and development, or preferably even improve standard of living. And you can see where inflation is sort of skyrocketing to. Yeah, a couple of people will say, oh, but inflation have dropped. But that's a very, very, very illiterate argument with all sense of respect, because inflation hasn't dropped. It is the pace of increase in prices that has slowed down. So, so it's just a conversation of jargon right now in Nigeria. So I would say that whilst there's some form of commitment by the current administration to get it right, I would still say that it's tactics, it's processes.
Mr. Obele, that's not the point of my question. Pardon me, perhaps I should repeat myself. The declarations by the president as far as the economic part of his speech yesterday is concerned, that the debt to revenue ratio has been reduced, the ways and means has been cleared. If that were the case, wouldn't it impact, on the economy to the effect that we would experience some form of stability, even in the exchange rate and in FX accretion? I'd like you to speak to the authenticity of that part of the president's speech, and with regards to the fact that, at different times in the recent past, the immediate past administration and the current one had announced the securitization of the ways and means loan, the 30 trillion naira in different portions now.
Yes, so to put it again in context, that is exactly what I'm speaking to, and I was just trying to lay context around it. So what I mean is, now, when you talk about the reduction of debt to GDP ratio and securitization of the ways and means and all of that, right? These are key indicators to governments that they are performing, but they are also not enough reflection of what people are going through on the ground. So that's what I was trying to say as well. It's just a context conversation. And debt to GDP ratio, if you look at it, really what it means in context to the living standards of Nigerians, it doesn't in any way translate to improved state of the economy. All right. It just means that you're probably taking a lesser form of your quote unquote GDP size, to service your debt, as the case may be. So whilst that is an improvement or is an authentic stance, when you're measuring how government is performing, it's still not completely authentic when you look at it from the lens of improving the livelihoods or the state of the Nigerian economy. And that's because metrics or indicators like that do not really have a transferable impact on the average Nigerian, and they don't have that because you've not developed the pipeline through which that impact will flow to the average Nigerian. All right, how does a debt to GDP ratio metric translate to improved livelihood? How does that translate? These are deeper conversations beyond just a presidential announcement. So in terms of authenticity of the statement, it is authentic on the grounds of how governments in the world today talk about economic indicators, but it is not authentic enough in terms of how individuals and the state of the economy right now is being played out.
All right, I'll take the same question now to our next speaker, Mr. Osamo. I'd like you to respond to it in the same breath, particularly with regards to, concerns that the administration is securing loans. So is it possible that in the last 16 months, the 30 trillion naira ways and means has been cleared?
Thank you very much for having me. Reacting to the statement of the president as regards the reduction in the cost of servicing the national debt, that is a good development because the interest element of it that are being saved will be approved to the national allocation, which will thereafter be allocated to the state and the subnationals. As per the ways and means, which it is a statutory permission by the central bank to advance funding to the government during a temporary budget period, there are shortfall. The reduction from about 30-something trillion to whatever amount now is a sign of a prudent management of resources. You see, sometimes when you are managing scale and obligation like Nigeria, you need to know the importance of making funding available to all the instrument and all the instrument of governance. Imagine when there are shortfall and then the government is cash strapped, you went to the city and are unable to reduce to access funding. To me, the way I mean, it's not the quantum of the ways and means that have been taken, it's the ability to be able to reduce it. The question is this: what percentage reduction have been reduced. And if I thought they be securitize their balance, to me, it's all about postponing the evil day. And then what we need to do is to make sure that the government, from this standpoint, will not increase that gap again, so that the run rate of repayment at the end of the day will be lower. Because the way I mean, it's an advancement to the government, and by extension, that's to be repaid down the road. Where will the repayment be coming from? That's to come from their state and national allocation. Right. If this amount has been reduced and have been restructured, I think it's a good one on the side of the government. So just for the government to make sure that going forward, that amount and the quantum of reduction is being made, so that over time, the quantum of waste may be taken from the government can be used, and by extension, that there are sufficient funds to be allocated to this statement for development and national growth.
Just to be clear and reiterate the point or the question being asked here, it's from the president's words, he said, we have cleared the ways and means debt of over 30 trillion naira. So he was clear, unequivocal, saying it has been cleared, not it has been securitized, not payments spread for a longer period. You get. He said it has been cleared, and that's essentially the question to Mr. Bailey and Mr. Samo. Do you think that the president tried to push this too far by saying it has been cleared when evidence says otherwise? And that's, I just want to maybe a yes or no from Mr. Yosamo and Gospel.
Thank you very much. I think I will lean to support the statement of the president.
Okay, so so you believe he has cleared it?
I believe that they cleared.
Okay.
It's all about nomenclature.
No, I understand. I understand that point, Mr. Samo. Let me ask Gospel. I understand, but clear is clear. If you clear your debts, you don't have your debt anymore. Gospel, do you agree? Have they been cleared from the evidence we have? Gospel, that's for you. Do you agree that it's been cleared? Please unmute so we can get your response. Gospel, please unmute so we can get you.
Yeah, I said I do not completely agree.
All right. So you don't agree that it's been cleared. I just wanted to be to get that point before we go to Mr. Aliyu. So Mr. Aliyu, over to you now. Well, again, you're an insider, as Bukola said, so you probably knew all of these things before they came out, and you have an inside view into what's going on. Why would the president say that ways and means has been cleared? Over 30 trillion of it been cleared by his administration when evidence says otherwise. Clearing a debt is one thing, securitizing it or deferring the payment is another thing entirely.
All right, I think it's a matter of understanding. Ways and means is actually a burden on the CBN, which exposes, the Apex Bank. And by clearing it, securitizing it, it's one of those things as to bring about transparency in the dealings of CBN and how they interact with federal government in terms of the ways and means. And if you remember clearly, about 4.5 trillion was raised from the stock market through FGN bonds, treasury bills, and CBN special bills. These were all means of getting the stock market, involved in securitizing the ways and means in ways that brings about transparency, brings about exposure. It not necessarily means that they've been paid off as debt. They've been converted to debt and been given a long time repayment period. Through these bonds that were issued and oversubscribed at the time, if you remember, it's what Mr. President refers to as being clear. I mean, CBN is in a better position now, to drill out and, implement other, monetary policies in such a way that the burden of the ways and means isn't right there in the face.
This is a very important point because people want to trust government, but that trust deficit is there. So when they hear that ways and means has been cleared over 30 trillion naira and the evidence speaks against it, they begin to wonder, so what else are you lying to us about? And that's my question. Is it a challenge with those who wrote that speech for the president, because they could have put it in the right words rather than saying you clear debt? Say what we did. We tried to make it more transparent. We tried to defer payments so the burden is reduced on government. and not outright clearance. This is a question of trust, and that's the point I'm trying to raise here. So how is this going to be fixed such that the trust is maybe rebuilt? Because it's widening the deficit, seeing this and seeing the reality.
Well, I think the details usually comes from CBN quarters, and what Mr. President referred to yesterday as far as the burden that this ways and means posed to CBN is, that burden has been taken off. That's what Mr. President refers to as it being cleared. You know, if it be converted to debt that's going to be paid over a period of time, I mean, nobody is saying those debts have been paid. But we are just saying that the burden that it poses to CBN being able to do what it ought to do, you know, as controller of the economy, is being taken off, and in such a way, and that other aspects of our debt management have been dealt with to reduce our debt management, our debt servicing from, you know, the 98% to revenue ratio we used to have to about 97 to 68%. That's what Mr. President referred to as yesterday, not at any point meant to mislead anyone that this has been paid off.
But Mr. Liu, that is still difficult to take in, because the loans, cumulative loans secured by this administration from the World Bank is $774 million, according to reports. And apart from that, the FIRS has only been able to surpass its target to the tune of a collection of 3.4 trillion naira revenue. And Nigeria's current debt is 102 trillion naira. So where did the revenue come from? You know, because the president's statement was quite categorical. So where did the revenue deploy to clearing this 30 trillion naira? Where did it come from? Mr. Liu.
Hello? Could you take that again?
I'd like you to explain to Nigerians where the revenue for this clearing of the 30 trillion naira, where did it come from? Because the World Bank loan cumulatively obtained from this administration, according to reports, is over $700 billion. And Nigeria's current debt is over 102 trillion naira. That's about $97 billion. And, you know, the FIRS has only been able to surpass its own target of non-oil sources of revenue to the tune of 3 trillion naira. So where did the revenue that the administration deployed to clear the 30 trillion naira ways and means, where did it come from?
Okay, this is different from, I mean, you're asking a question that is different from what I just tried to explain. I think the guys from CBN will do a better job at it. But it isn't that the ways and means, you know, as a burden. Ways and means is a burden on CBN, not on the government. You know, it's money borrowed to government as an advance, you know, payment to government to run its business. It's a burden on CBN that has not been lifted up. You know, that's what the clearance means. I mean, they've been done through treasury bills, they've been done through bonds, they've been done through CBN special bills, you know, and it's given them enough time to be able to now settle this while dealing with the other responsibility of, you know, getting our monetary policies implemented in such a way that, you know, gives confidence to investors and, you know, lead to economic growth.
Well, I'm trying to understand your explanation, Mr. Liu, but, you know, I know how difficult it is to reconcile all of the figures. So I'm just going to take it to Mr. Obele this time around, you know, to react to some other part of the president's speech. Mr. Obele, the president also approved the economic stabilization bill. He spoke to that yesterday, and according to him, it will be transmitted to the National Assembly. And the president provided the assurance that the bill will make business environment more friendly and stimulate investment in the economy. We've had several economic programs in the past. Under the past administration, there was the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, but some Nigerians would say that the past administration set Nigeria back economically by many years because there was little result, on the impact of the economy, of the economic stabilization, economic recovery growth of the past administration. So how optimistic are you about this economic stabilization bill to transform Nigeria's economic fortunes vis-a-vis its fiscal and monetary policy programs that is still under scrutiny about its efficacy, to provide some form of stability to the economy?
Thank you very much for the question. I am not confident that this particular stability program will deliver in any way. Because you want to also take a cue from other ones that have failed, and very clearly, although rather you need a plan to get out of a crisis. So which is why we keep saying economic growth, stability, development plans, recovery plans, whatever the names are, needs, development plans and all those things. You always will need a plan to get out of a crisis. So reasons why we constantly always have these plans. However, all of the plans have failed because we are in a worse off situation than where we were. All right. And I don't think this one has a chance of succeeding. And that's because of many factors, right? You have the case where even how the plans are designed, is quite questionable in terms of, is it very reflective? I mean, when I mean reflective, intelligently reflective of the current state of livelihood issues or doing business challenges within Nigeria, and how much of forward-thinking, evidence-based input went into it, how much of strategic consultations, because emphasis on the word strategic, because someone can then come out and say, oh, there were consultations, but consultations with who? How did you pull together the team of those that were consulted? Then you now take a step further to say, how were those plans developed in terms of, are they designed in such a way that they can deliver on the nitty-gritty elements of development, the strands and all of that? For instance, now, when you talk about industrialization as a component of the plan, how will that industrialization be delivered? How many institutions, how many firms, how many businesses will be supported towards, industrialization? How many businesses are we seeking to grow or scale within the Nigerian environment, inside that industrialization component? And then how many jobs will those businesses create? I don't know if you get what I mean. So the plan has to be able to identify those nitty-gritty lines as it translates, like I talked about earlier on, the pipeline of impact for the average Nigerian. So if a development plan does not indicate how many jobs it will create in how many states and how many locales and all of that, how it will probably plan to partner with subnational governments and NDAs, and you need to see a strategic flow of thinking as regards how that plan will be delivered, plus how that plan will be financed. It has to be very clear and it has to be sustainable, plus who will deliver or action the execution of that plan? Are they capable? Are they able? So, for instance, if you look at the Empower, for instance, it was a one-size-fits-all approach. Trying to just use one model to deliver jobs across different sectors. So it failed on many grounds. All right, even largely on its execution. So you want to look at all these critical components, and then how does that plan prospectively delivers on the sustainable development agenda of the Nigerian economy? I'm not talking about United Nations or the sustainable development agenda, the prosperity agenda of the Nigerian people. How does that plan? So if you look at that plan from these metrics I mentioned, right, you can tell exactly from scratch that it would most likely not deliver. Again, you also look at the fiscal and monetary, like you mentioned, the inefficacies of the policies, how those policies keep clashing, how those policies are not forward-thinking enough in terms of reflective in empowering or engineering growth and development. Take, for instance, now, in the Nigerian context, and likely in some nations in the world today, interest rates alone are not enough to solve the inflationary challenge we're faced with.
Right.
And that's because that inflationary challenge has been nuanced into what we term as the increasing rise or a rise in the cost of living crisis. Right. So whilst inflation may be going down, in my opinion, I don't think it's going down. I think that the pace of increase in food, commodities, and all of those things have only slowed down. All right, and then that's why you see that it's so expensive for people to buy a basket of tomatoes, even if you see the inflation numbers have gone down. So if you put all these ideas in context of the plan,
right,
it's most likely dead on arrival. Apologies to say.
Well, it's very interesting when you just take a look at some of those items in the president's speech. I mean, you've spoken about the stabilization bit. Let me come to Mr. Oshamo and talk about the energy bit, because that's your sector. You're well versed in that sector. Some people had said that they had expected the president to say something about maybe petrol or energy, to the extent that it's actually a major determinant of the cost of living, cost of food and the rest. They say that petrol is so much in everything that you can literally smell it in food and all other things, just because the cost is added to that. So when you listen to the president and you didn't hear the conversation around energy costs, petrol, because it has been a major controversial issue, do you think that was deliberate? Do you think it was an omission? Or do you think the government has done enough and they're like, you know what, let's hands off. You people just deal with it.
Thank you very much. I think it's a missed opportunity by the president to actually assume the fear of the populace. An Independence Day speech around the challenges of petroleum and every other thing will have gone a long way in placating the populace. However, you need to understand the significance of the impact of the policy that the government has recently taken. Energy is my sector, and I can tell you from the industry standpoint that effective this month, there is going to be a significant shift in the body as regards the petroleum product in Nigeria. For me, I think the president needs an opportunity to actually mention, even if it's a line, look, the government is looking at the cost of bringing down the cost of petroleum. That will go a long way in making a lot of people happy. But aside the mixing the opportunity, I think there are deliberate plans by the government to make sure that the problem of petroleum is solved permanently. What the president has done, given the recent policies to make sure that availability problem has been solved, and availability problem is solved about making sure that this products are available. Now we have to move to pricing problem, and pricing problem is a function of many variables. And one of them is to make sure that, look, these products are being refined locally. By the time you refine locally, you eliminate a lot of foreign input on this product. However, you need to know that if you're able to solve the petroleum problem in the Nigerian economy, that will give price a lot of benefit because the pressure on the FX is going to be reduced. If you look at the daily FX consumption in Nigeria, importation of petroleum products consumes about 40% of that. And if you mark that dollar to dollar, that means we are talking about 40% of the pressure on dollar. So with time, we're beginning to see a kind of depression on naira as regards the dollar and every other thing. So to me, it's a missed opportunity, but things have been done on the ground.
So let me take this to Mr. Ali Aldu in Abuja studio, because I know that petrol is a big deal even for you. Nobody is left out except you're using maybe a Tesla. But everybody has to buy petrol if you're not buying for your generating set, for your vehicle, or other things. So what do you think was the thinking in the speech that wasn't mentioned? What we got was general conversation around divestment and all of that, which, well, may mean a lot for those who are in business, right? But for the Nigerian people who have been looking back and forth, how much will we buy petrol? 1,000 plus. That's what we're buying it now. Would it grow? Will it reduce? What will the president say about it? Well, they didn't hear anything. So was that deliberate, really? Or what exactly is it thinking?
All right. I mean, like you rightly said, the part of speech that didn't mention petrol is the fact that it shows commitment from Mr. President in terms of deregulating the petroleum sector. I mean, he did mention, alternatives that could give succor to our economy, especially when it comes to cost of living, cost of food. That's the compressed natural gas and the presidential initiative on the compressed natural gas, it took time to mention what the government is doing as far as that is concerned. And it doesn't look like, even with the Naira for crude scheme, that the petrol PMS is going to come down by a whole lot, you know. And it really, even though it's what Nigerians want to hear, but the reality is, you know, we are going to have to seek opportunities in alternative means of, you know, powering our vehicles, powering all the other things we use the PMS for. That's why government is big on this conversion, on the CNG conversion. Government is big on the presidential with the presidential initiative on compressed natural gas. It has witnessed a lot of investment, $175 million in the last, you know, 1 year alone, and it's gone from, conversion centers have gone from 7 to 125 as it is. This is clearly telling us that, you know, we, as much as we like the petrol thing, it doesn't economically look like what is our best bet today. We should start thinking of alternatives. And, you know, President cannot promise what he can't deliver on. Promising that the petrol price is going to come down, it doesn't seem feasible. And as such, there's really no point going about it. That's why he's like, what does the government do to ensure that the pressure is reduced in terms of cost of living for the citizen, is to improve, you know, availability of the compressed natural gas conversion centers across the country, which has been, a lot of work has been done on that. And maybe, just maybe, when we shift away from petroleum product, from this PMX, cost of transportation, cost of food will come down, and, you know, cost of living will basically generally improve.
And Mr. Aide, I'd like you to provide an update on that, if you can, because you know, the big work that you say the president and the administration is doing in terms of deployment of CNG has not quite translated into impact across the country. We know that CNG buses have been deployed to states like Kwara, Ogun, Adamawa. What updates can you provide to Nigerians in terms of how soon those CNG buses can go across the 36 states of the Federation, because indeed there has been announcement of investment of resources to the purchase of CNG buses, and the infrastructure for a country of over 200 million people, 175 stations is definitely inadequate. So what updates can you provide about how soon those CNG infrastructure will go across the 36 states of the Federation?
All right. I mean, the federal government is partnering seriously with states to set up conversion centers and invest in a mass transport system that are going to be running on the CNG, basically. But the good thing about this is the president isn't looking at having these buses, you know, wholly imported. They are being assembled locally here, and there's been a lot of waivers on importation for the kits, and a lot is being put in place now to ensure manufacturing of some of these kits, you know, the cylinders, and the other parts of the kits, or other parts of the conversion generally locally, so as to create jobs and ensure that we're not exporting our jobs, and, you know, while we have a number of unemployed citizens here. I think it's, while the government will not put money into setting up or buying assembled cars, what it's doing is to ensure that, you know, it facilitate investment in this sector, provide whatever support the investors at different level of the chain require to expand the acceptance and increase the use of CNG across the country. And that would basically take a little time, you know. I mean, it's a shift in how we currently run our cars, and it's going to take a while for people to, you know, build trust and understand that I mean, is a better alternative right now to PMS, and this will equally provide investment opportunity for investors in this sector, so as to open up the other states that currently don't have, and have as much as many conversion, stations, many refueling stations across the country for users.
Indeed. That will take time, you rightly noted, and the price of petrol is definitely not waiting for time. It keeps going on, and Nigerians are groaning beneath the weight of the impact of that on other aspects of national life. But we'd like to thank you very much indeed, Mr. Aliu Audu, Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs. Thank you for joining us on the program as we anchor. And at this point, we also thank Mr. Dari Osamo, Founder, CEO, Impact Energy and Logistics Limited, who is also the Chief Financial Officer, University of Warwick Business School, who joined us virtually. Mr. Gospel Obele, Research Economist, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And we move on to the next leg of our conversation. This time around, we'll be looking at other issues, particularly the health sector, as we, touch base with some states of the Federation where they are currently dealing with the impact of the cholera outbreak. Stay with us, we'll be right back.